Brazilian Spring was coined shortly after the election by Bannon. By Bannon? He and others say he has since dedicated several episodes of his podcast to an election he's calling one of the most consequential political events in the world. I would agree. It is direct consequence of the insurrection that was held here. Hello, Halfpint here, and I just wanted to say real quick, if you've been enjoying my content, please remember to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and follow me on Twitch so you can always catch us when we're live and see more content. Also, if you are new here, welcome in, and if you're enjoying the video, please remember to like it because it helps me out a lot. I also post funny clips and other things on TikTok. All the links are in the description below, and thanks again. Now let's get into the video. Some of you might remember when we were covering the I think it was a John Oliver episode and maybe possibly a Philip DeFranco, but there were elections coming up in Brazil, and the elected official currently was discussing the idea that, you know, should he was first promoting ideas. His name's Bolsonaro. First saying that their system was full of a lot of fraud, election fraud, voter fraud, you know, the same narratives that we were seeing from the GOP, specifically Trump and his supporter base, and insinuating the idea that, like, should he lose, it would be a fraudulent election or the result of a fraudulent election, but should he win, it would either be evidence of them being enough to crush the wave of fraud or the election maintaining its integrity. And he half threatened the idea that there would be a something similar to what America saw on January 6th in their country should he lose. And Sunday, his supporters made good on that threat. They stormed the president's residence, but he was away doing work, so he wasn't actually home. But they stormed his residence, they stormed the Supreme Court building, and they stormed their Congress building. At this point, about 400 arrested, I believe. So we're gonna jump into that, get a better look at what's going on there. But it's a horrifying reality of the situation we're in now. It's been normalized to that point where now, like, someone is already piggybacked off of what happened on January 6th. First, like, directly saying, like, we will borrow that tactic and do something, see something similar here, should this not go our way. And then when it did not go their way, there are people storming government buildings now, committing domestic terrorist acts because elections aren't going their way. Which, say what you will about, you know, elections, say what you will about any, that is not democracy. That is not a democratic process. It doesn't support a democratic process. It doesn't support a democratic environment. It's yeah, absolutely. It spits in the face of the very idea you supposedly are standing up for. But at the end of the day, a lot of them know that. And this isn't about democracy. This is about getting what they want by all means necessary. And that's why they're doing these things. But we're gonna look into this. I am not too familiar with Brazil's internal politics or their past situations. I know not too terribly long ago, relatively, they were a military dictatorship. So I know it is a different situation than the U.S. So I obviously cannot be familiar with the nuances of their systems and arguments and plights.
Neither the nation's Congress nor its Supreme Court were in session.
Sorry about the audio.
At the time of the riots. By 5 p.m. yesterday, riot police and security were able to retake the Supreme Court, and the presidential palace was retaken about an hour later. The Washington Post reports a visibly Angered, Lula addressed the nation yesterday evening, condemning the invaders as fascists and blamed Bolsonaro for encouraging the attacks by repeatedly questioning the integrity of the electoral process. The region's governor says more than 400 of the rioters have already been arrested. Video shows those detained being loaded into buses and...
Why are they hiding their faces now? That's the craziest part to me. These people were running around the entire Capitol building, the Supreme Court, and the president's residence. There's so much footage of them unmasked. Nothing. No one thought to cover anything. Because that was the main thing I was thinking when I was watching coverage. Like, oh my God, do they not remember how many people they identified here in America with like footage and pictures on people's cell phones and like charged? And sure enough, you know, unmasked. Well, I mean, I guess these were people were arrested the day of, but it's interesting to me that they have no shame doing the first part. They have no shame like storming government buildings, no shame like just straight up destroying government property, something they supposedly give a lot of shits about. And then at the same time, like no shame there, but they have all the shame once they've been arrested. Like now they're going to cover their face as they're being ushered into this bus by the military, which, oh my God, I believe it was the lead of defense in Brazil. They freaking authorized like all federal forces against the protesters like very fast. They at least on paper responded extreme. Like not like, I don't know about too extreme. I don't know necessarily. I'm kind of learning right now how the details of the response were. But they authorized a lot to control the situation, which was a lot more than happened here, I'll say. Like, I feel like we kind of famously failed that day in our mitigation of the situation. And
driven away by police. So you notice some similarities?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the similarities in the riots in Brazil and the January 6th attacks.
Yeah, not a coincidence.
They're just not a coincidence.
Not at all. Throughout his campaign.
You can't even pretend it's just a coincidence because he literally mentioned January 6th by name.
Bolsonaro pushed misinformation about election security to his supporters. He repeatedly claimed that Brazil's electronic voting machines were prone to fraud.
Where did he get that from?
No evidence to support his unfounded claims.
Where did he get that from?
The strategy mirrors what Donald Trump and his allies did following the 2020 election. Some of Trump's allies were also involved in spreading lies about the election in Brazil.
What?
And have been advising Bolsonaro and his son. Bolsonaro's son, Eduardo, who is a congressman in Brazil and was in Washington during the January 6th attack on the Capitol, met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago after his father lost October's election. The Washington Post reported he was also strategizing with Steve Bannon. And
no way, dude. Oh my God. Okay. I mean, does it get much more direct than that? That is absolutely unhinged. I'd really like to see more details around this. Trump aides Bannon Miller advising the Bolsonaro on next steps. Oh my God. Can I read this? Rio de Janeiro. Okay, so when was this? This was November 23rd, 2022. So this is around Thanksgiving. Well, tens of thousands of supporters of President Jair Bolsonaro camp outside military facilities across Brazil to protest his election loss. Members of Bolsonaro's inner circle are meeting with advisors to former President Donald Trump to discuss next steps. Brazilian Congressman Eduardo Bolsonaro, the president's son, has visited Florida since the October 30th vote, meeting Trump at Mar-a-Lago and strategizing with other political allies by phone. He spoke with former Trump strategist Stephen K. Bannon, who was in Arizona assisting the campaign of GOP gubernatorial candidate Carrie Lake. What does this word mean? Relating to state governor or office of state governor.
Gubernatorial.
Gubernatorial. Relating to state governor or the office of state governor. Okay. Tens of thousands of his supporters continue to camp outside military bases over 20 cities, some calling for commanders to intervene in the vote. Yeah, I heard about that too. Basically, a bunch of his supporters, this is fucking insane. They were like standing outside the military bases, basically asking the military to just like say no to the election. Like, could you stage a coup? Would you guys please either do this or help us like overthrow this situation? Which I don't know. That just seems like such a weird concept to me. I can't imagine like the reality of a bunch of people mad at an election result coming in droves outside of your military base or a military base, just parking up at the fence and then just being like, hey, do something, but there's like nothing to actually do. And like, I don't know. And the scary thing is, you know, like from what I understand, that's probably not necessarily outside the realm of possibilities for what some in their military might desire. I don't know if that's true, but that's like, from what I understand, not too long ago, the military was in charge. Demonstrators have been photographed holding handmade signs reading Brazilian Spring and, okay, Brazil was stolen in English, demonstrating the close ties between right-wing movements in the two countries. The phrases have trended on Brazilian Twitter several times this month. Brazilian Spring was coined shortly after the election by Bannon. By Bannon? He and others say he has since dedicated several episodes of his podcast to an election he's calling one of the most consequential political events in the world. I would agree. It is a direct consequence of the insurrection that was held here. Yeah, no, that's pretty well outlined.
Former Trump campaign spokesman Jason Miller. In late November, Eduardo Bolsonaro tweeted this video of Bannon speaking at CPAC Mexico.
Look in the streets of Brazil. Look at the great patriots in Brazil that at a lot of danger to themselves have come forward in the streets of Brazil. And quite frankly, as much as I love the Bolsonaros, and Eduardo I think is going to speak tomorrow, and there's no better man on this globe than Eduardo Bolsonaro or his father. In Brazil, it's gone beyond the Bolsonaros. This is the people saying, no, you didn't follow the Constitution. You use these machines, you use the judiciary to shut us down in the media, and we're not going to tolerate it. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. Same in the United States. You know, the people like Kerry Lake are not going to give up, and I use as a warning in the great...
Oh, okay. Wow, that was a lot to unpack. That was like, I mean, Bannon's going to Bannon, but, warning of what? What are you about to threaten?
In the great fight that you guys have in front of you, both for the cultural issues, for the political issues.
Wait.
Great fight that you guys have in front of you, both for the cultural. Interesting to see how that plays out. Same in the United States. You know, the people like Kerry Lake are not going to give up, and I use as a warning in the great fight that you guys have in front of you, both for the cultural issues, for the political issues, and the economic issues. Once they start taking and digitizing the elections, once they start going to machines where you can't get paper ballot, you don't have proof of ID, you take it away from the precincts, and they start to centralize it in collection centers, that's all done for one reason. That's to consistently steal elections, because they know they don't have the backing of the people.
Oh my God, dude. Oh my God. This is so unhinged. Like, I know it's basically America's bag to destabilize other countries' governments for the sake of, you know, installing a more compliant capitalist or capitalism sympathetic leader. I totally get that. That's like America 101. Which is fucked and terrible, obviously. Like, one of the worst atrocities that we continue to inflict on the world, and an extension of capitalism and how capitalism stays so firmly rooted. I mean, the idea is, right, if if this country's capitalism and materialism demands products at such a low cost that it involves the international enslavement of poor communities in less developed or less democratic nations, nations where people have less rights, like China, where we have, factories being made, children working, we have, it's like the same playbook from like way back with British Empire taking over India and like enslaving the Indian people for their textile industry. It's the same bag. America does the same thing with tons of different industries across the globe, car, electronics, clothing, everything. And so what that creates is this country now has entire communities and economy reliant upon the American economy. How much product is being asked of them to be made? How much are they getting paid by American manufacturers, brands, to manufacture their product so it can be shipped and sold. So like I get that. But the idea of someone like Steve Bannon being able to do that, horrifying to me on like a whole nother level. Like the idea of Steve Bannon being able to say, Brazil, your election was totally stolen. Like dude, there's no way he knows. There's no way he is super informed about what's going on in Brazil. I just don't buy it. He's literally just it just seems like random fear stoking for the sake of fear stoking. Like he's destabilizing an entire country's government for the sake of rallying up some right wingers in America. And that's bad to me. That is a horrifying possibility that is now on the table. That's crazy.
Last night, Bannon posted on social media, quote, Lula stole the elections. God. Brazilians know this. He's been talking about Brazil for months, pushing conspiracies and calling for Bolsonaro and his supporters to not accept the results of the election.
We got to start in Brazil with the Bolsonaros and the fight for freedom and the fight for sovereignty. The criminal Lula, the international criminal Lula, the partner of the Chinese Communist Party, is on the cusp with the aid and assistance of the United States government and national security apparatus, who brag about, CIA going down there in the summer, warning the Bolsonaros. All
right, enough. We get the idea.
We get the
You just cut him off.
Trump's not commenting on the rights of Brazil, but he expressed his support for this thug several times. He took credit for helping him reach the runoff in the presidential election. Jimmy Raskin of Maryland made a direct comparison between what's happening in Brazil and Donald Trump supporters, tweeting apart these fascists, modeling themselves after Trump's January 6th rioters, must end up.
I mean, obviously. Is there any other coverage? Or is this all just you guys handing down an opinion? What's going on here?
Now going out globally, holding these big events to further instigate.
Yeah, they're actually using a
install.
lot of tear gas and stuff too on the people, which is insane. From what I understand, and this is a basic general overview, the Bolsonaro is the conservative side. It seems to be a side that is influenced a lot by the remnants of Christian missionaries and the effect that had on South America and the damage to their cultures it had. And it's a side kind of rooted in Christian beliefs, not like pretty similar to American conservatism, but obviously different in that it's a different country. And so it's their conservative movement. And I understand that people are comparing it to fascism, but I don't know much about, like, you know, the specific policies, what they're pushing for. I would imagine it's the same sorts of things, you know, like border security, you know, xenophobic, sort of nationalist behaviors, possibly even evangelical, you know, Christian nationalist vibe. I don't know. But I'm trying to learn more and more about it, and the more I learn about it, the more obviously we'll discuss it and kind of break into it. And I know, or I'm pretty sure we're gonna go over it in this. Yes, Philip DeFranco, which I'm so excited. I'm so excited that Philip DeFranco is back.
Brazil just had their very own January 6th, except these copycats did it on January 8th. So let me break it down for you. Last October, Brazil's left-wing candidate, Lula da Silva, wins the presidential election against far-right incumbent Jair Bolsonaro, with Bolsonaro never formally conceding the loss, which left many observers fearing that he was going to attempt a coup to remain in power. This is not only because he's questioned the election system's integrity for years now, but also because he celebrated the military dictatorship from 1964 to 85. But by last week, nothing had happened, and the election results were certified giving Lula the presidency. Though that wasn't completely smooth. You had Bolsonaro supporters blocking roads and setting cars on fire. But that looked like, hey, that's all there is, until yesterday happened. Because yesterday you had thousands of people in the capital, Brasilia, marching on the plaza known as Three Powers Square, named so for the three branches of government housed
Yeah,
there.
I believe that was the Supreme Court building that they just showed.
The Congress, the Supreme Court, and the presidential offices. So with the state police hopelessly outnumbered, you had hordes of rioters bursting inside all three buildings, finding little resistance. You see them setting fires, knocking police off horseback, using barricades as weapons. Several reports from different outlets reported journalists getting attacked and robbed. You hear them shouting that they're taking their country back. They will not be stopped. Then, draped in the Brazilian flag, they're seen smashing windows and flooding Congress with a sprinkler system. Thankfully, unlike January 6th, neither Congress nor the court were in session, and there was no...
What does that accomplish? What does all of that accomplish? Like, I don't know. I mean, protests are weird anyway, because, like, the bigger a group of people is, the more simple communication has to, you know, break down to, for the sake of efficiently and effectively communicating to the entire crowd. But, like, why flood the building? I don't know. I guess it's just destruction of property because of frustration, which is a pretty basic concept in protests. But
official proceeding
it just seems weird coming from conservatives. I don't know if this is a thing in Brazil. This is why I'm hesitant to say it. But, like, here in America, you know, our conservatives are the first to be like, oh, if it's destruction of property, it's a riot. You know, it is not a protest, as if the two are mutually exclusive, and there isn't some amount of damage that can happen in a legitimate protest, or protest that can happen in a riot. You know, like, things are much more gray than that sort of situation paints it to be. But regardless, our conservatives would be like, you know, this is a disgrace, and obviously they even kind of did that with January 6th. They condemned the whole situation a little bit, but then they went straight into minimizing. It was a weird time for them as they kind of scrambled to figure out what was going on. But it's ironic that, like, now consistently, I guess you could say, since there's been two instances, the same people who are quick to criticize any protest for becoming, you know, nothing but a destruction of property fest are the same people who are destroying government property. I don't know. That just seems...
Just like January 6th, they seemed unsure what to actually do once they got inside, just kind of breaking things, rifling through papers, posing for photographs, with one official showing the extensive damage done to his office. Meanwhile, you've got police firing back with rubber bullets, pepper spray, tear gas, even showering them from helicopters overhead. And then eventually, the army arrives with much more firepower to begin dispersing the rioters. And at around 9 p.m. local time, over 7 hours after the chaos broke out, Brazil's justice minister finally announced the buildings had been cleared. Though notably, the next day, you still had thousands of protesters camped outside the army headquarters waiting for Bolsonaro and the military to launch a coup. But as far as Bolsonaro, apparently he's just hanging out in Florida, which is where he went just over a week ago to avoid attending Lula's inauguration, and also to cool off investigations into his activity as president. Also, as far as Lula, he wasn't at the Capitol at the time, though he did return there after the dust settled to address the nation, calling the rioters fascists and blaming Bolsonaro for encouraging them by stoking election denialism.
That is... I can't believe he was in Florida. What the fuck? What was he doing in Florida? Like, just avoiding... They said investigations into his presidency. How does this man have supporters?
Like true vandals destroying what they found in front of them. We think there was a lack of security. And
Dude, they had to fight Trump. They had to fight Trump from being at the front of the crowd. They're like, Mr. President, shut up. We're taking you somewhere else where it's safe. You know, and he about like chokes the limo driver for the sake of like, drive me to where they're going. And like, this dude's like, you couldn't pay me to be where my supporters are. I'm going to America and getting the hell out of here, dude. Like, catch me in Florida. How about that? That's crazy.
That all those people who did this will be found and punished. They will realize that democracy guarantees the right to freedom and free speech, but it also demands that people respect the institutions created to strengthen democracy.
With this issuing an emergency decree allowing the federal government to take any measures necessary to restore order in the Capitol through the rest of the month.
Yeah, okay, so it was Lula, President Lula, who authorized that. I thought it was their head of defense. Well, he might be their head of defense. I don't know what their structure is, you know?
Now saying that at least 400 people have been arrested with videos showing them being driven away in buses. As far as Bolsonaro's response to all of this, he was silent for the first 6 hours of the attack. He was probably at a Publix just enjoying a good sub. That's like 90% of what I do when I go back to Florida. But then he tweeted that he repudiates Lula's accusations against him. So we'll wait to see what happens from here. And
not the riot, not the destruction of property, not any of that stuff. Just the claim that they're fascists.
The government cleans up the mess. You also have people asking, just like with January 6th, why was law enforcement so unprepared given how much clamor there had been on social media leading up to this? But for now, we're gonna have to wait to see if we get answers to that and so much more. But in the meantime, I'd love to know your thoughts on them.
Thanks for watching, guys. Follow me on Twitch to join us live, like and subscribe, and I will catch you later.